And welcome back to our continuing series, Stop the Presses. Tonight, our second segment. You know, no matter how you feel about Geithner's plan to rescue the banks from their own mistakes, it's becoming clear that the American public were bailout weary. Wall Street, the auto industry, banks, you name it. There was even talk of a bailout for local newspapers as an increasing number of printing presses are going silent. Now in Michigan, the Ann Arbor News will shut down this July after 174 years of publication. It'll be replaced by an online-only outlet with a greatly reduced staff. And here in our region, 2 local newspapers in Connecticut, they narrowly escaped the same fate, at least for now. Let's bring in Carolyn Rose. She joins us with that story.
Well, Rich, it's a story that's hitting many communities throughout the country, the threat of losing their local paper. It was a close call for 2 Connecticut communities as they were just days away from stopping the presses.
It's very good, yeah. It's important to have a local paper.
I think the community probably relies on it a little bit, yeah. I do, you know, for the classifieds and the local news.
But reading all about it in a local paper is a luxury that 2 Connecticut towns almost recently lost. The Bristol Press and the New Britain Herald were slated to close shop in January, meaning about 90 employees would have gotten pink slips.
There would have not been papers. They were definitely closed and everything had been canceled.
But at the last minute, Michael Schroeder stepped in and bought the 2 newspapers, allowing them to keep their doors open and the papers printing.
I really didn't save the papers. I'm giving the communities an opportunity to save their papers, giving them the time to buy subscriptions, buy single copies, and advertise. If those happen, we're going to have a great paper. We're going to give them every opportunity to do that. If the support isn't there, then there can't be a paper.
Schroeder says he's trying to pick up the pieces after what he calls a perfect and damaging storm. Newspapers trying to deal with higher costs, a changing market, and an economic crisis. Plus, he says the Journal Register Company, the publicly traded company that sold him the papers, had run into a real debt problem.
Same as most newspaper companies, where they had very high margins, were able to get a large amount of credit, buy a lot of high-priced properties, and then when things declined and they didn't have that margin anymore, they couldn't afford to pay for the debt.
Both papers are about 130 years old. The history in their community is obvious when you look around the newsroom. Headlines lining the walls read, U.S. rockets winding toward moon, and Germany surrenders unconditionally. But where the papers are going is less obvious. In their height, they had between a 40 and 50,000 circulation each. Now they're about 9,000 each. Michael says in economic times like this, advertisers tend to cut back and the way people get their news is changing. Some in the community saying they're skeptical about how long down the line they'll be able to stay afloat.
I look more on the news, on TV.
On TV?
On TV or on the internet. The internet changes everything because nobody wants to buy the paper no more. Now when you want something, you go to the internet. It's like when you want to write to somebody, a lot of people don't use the post office anymore either. It's everything text message or the internet.
Challenges Michael is trying to overcome. He says the papers plan to redo their website to keep up with these times where people want instant information. And he says they're not trying to compete with the big news outlets. Their audience is those that are looking for what's happening locally.
Take a look at our paper. You don't see a lot of that kind of coverage, but you do see a tremendous amount of local news, local events, sport, and local sports that you can't get anyplace else. We may not be the New York Times, but we have more exclusive coverage that you can't get from anywhere else.
Now, when the paper was slated to close, some government officials became very involved in seeing what they could do to find a buyer and keep the presses rolling. It even created some controversy when the word bailout was thrown around, although some say it was misinterpreted. Schroeder says the paper is not getting any money from government sources, but says they would take the help if it is offered to businesses of the same size. Rich?
You know, before I get to bailout, you get the sense this if these papers go away, the community really has nowhere else to turn for their local news, right?
Absolutely. People that I was talking to in the community say this is where they go for classifieds. This is where they go to find out what's going on in their community. A place like New Britain, they said they have papers in Hartford that are bigger and cover a bigger area, but if they want to know what's going on in the streets around them, this is where they turn to.
And finally, Carolyn, the idea of a bailout, maybe in the not traditional sense, but what kind of help would the paper really welcome here?
They said that they would be interested in things like tax breaks, perhaps lower costs for capital loans so they could help grow their business, and they're trying to move where the papers are housed, so they would be interested in getting some help in doing that.
Thank you very much, Carolyn.